I believe Phil Mickelson has entered an ebb at the moment because the Billy Walters excerpts are coming out. So for those who need to get caught up on this, Billy Walters went to prison for insider trading, was a partner of Phil Mickelson in a ton of wagering.
Yeah, what do you even call it? Like,
I don't know. Yeah.
Business endeavors.
Yeah. As soon as I started that sentence, I was like, I don't know where I'm going with this. They made bets together, lots of them, over many years for lots of money. Billy Walters now out of prison. His book is coming out, and KP, the excerpts are making it out. So I think the book comes out in about 10 days, 2 weeks or so. And we're starting to get a glimpse into kind of the relationship that these two had. I have some snippets, I have some quotes, I have some figures, but we kind of knew this book would come out. Like, we've known about this book.
We have, and I've heard the excerpt is like, yeah, this is kind of what I don't know how much more there is. I've not read it. I have no idea, but I don't know how much more there is to come out. It seems like this was kind of like the stuff, right? And I think, listen, like, I think it would be easy to look at this and kind of dunk on Phil. And, you know, I think there is there's a through line here of like, and Joel Beal was kind of commenting on this yesterday on Twitter, and I thought it's a little amusing. There's a through line of like, hey, Phil bet on a bunch of Major League Baseball games, and that's why we have 2 golf leagues now, right? Like, there's certainly a story there that you're like, that is maybe not exactly how things went down, but it's not that far from reality. But I think listen, like, the thing I'm glad you said this on Twitter, and I'd love for you to kind of like go a little deeper on it. But I think there's just some sadness there from me about the whole thing. Clearly there's like a forget about the money, just look at the frequency. Like, that's a real problem. Like, that's a real issue for a person, regardless of whether it's a famous person or an athlete or whatever. And then I think obviously the bombshell is the Ryder Cup stuff. And that is like, man, it's funny to kind of joke about. And like, I'm sure a ton of things will like be joked about during this year's Ryder Cup. But it's like, that's massive. Like, that's such a big deal. And I don't know whether Phil did or did not bet on the Ryder Cup, but for that to even be a thing is like, geez, like that's monumental.
So I'll credit. So this is I'm reading it on Golf Digest, but it was originally via Fire Pit Collective. They have a content partnership with one another. So the excerpt available in both places if you do want to check it out. The frequency or the reported habits of Phil Mickelson between 2010 and 2014, he wagered $110,000 to win 100,000 1,100 times. 858 occasions in which he bet 220,000 to win 200,000. In 2011 alone, over 1 year, he made 3,100 bets, about 9 a day. He wagered 7,000 times on football, basketball, and baseball games during that period. I think that Phil Mickelson is generally an easy target, right? He wants to be and thinks he's the smartest guy in the room. He says a lot of silly stuff. It's fun, whatever. This is a man with a serious gambling addiction. He's acknowledged that and said he has been seeking help and has done hundreds of hours of therapy. And I just don't want to necessarily get these two things confused, KP, right? Where I'm happy to make to poke fun at Phil a lot. This is a serious addiction, and because society kind of looks at addiction weird anyway, but also looks at it from a perspective like Phil just happens to have made at least enough money to have this gone on for as long as it is, where seemingly it has not been financial ruin for him and his family. He's tweeted out that he's worth close to $1 billion now, but that does not make this any less of a problem, and probably something that he fights all the time, right? I mean, this is something that he will deal with every single day. That's the fact of it. You're on mute.
My first podcast ever. I was drinking water with ice. I didn't want it to be blowing up. I have complicated feelings about this. I generally really like Phil as a character. I think he's like the best character. Like sports needs more people like him, but I think he's a complicated character, right? And I think that, some of this is like, can we stop the narrative that like benevolent Phil went out of his way to like make life better for all the PGA Tour, right? Like that's just such like a stupid, sloppy narrative, when the reality is like, hey, seems like there's like a money issue or issues here, right? And I don't know all the details of that, but I think this is pretty clear. Like it for me, it clarifies some of the like the reasons behind freaking like writing the operating agreement for LIV, right? And so let's stop with all that. But I think, did you watch the Bryson Phil video of their match?
Just the first couple minutes. I got to go back and finish it.
Okay, so well, you probably saw this part then, and they were talking about like, hey, we're betting for 1,000, and it's like, well, are we okay? Like, this is somebody that clearly has a problem. We're kind of like still celebrating that. I don't know what to do with, kind of both sides of Phil. And I think Phil doesn't know what to do with both sides of Phil. And I think that's why, he's a polarizing figure, but he's also a very compelling one, because it's almost like Phil does things that most normal people have no connection to, or like they can't identify with. But the human nature part of it, of like struggling to be this one thing when you're like wanting to be this other thing, that's something that everybody can deal with, or that everybody can relate to. And I think that is what has made Phil such a compelling figure over the course of his career.
Yes. And I think with, everything we read about Phil basically throughout his entire life in the Shipnuck book that came out, what was that, last year? And then, this is not a surprise. We've heard a lot of this stuff, but yeah, I think it is, it's very complicated. There are a lot of layers to Phil. It is a little, I think he said, like, I only gamble. He acknowledges he has a gambling addiction. And then he says, I only bet, $1,000. I don't bet more than $1,000. And someone on Twitter, I don't remember who said, it's like, that's like having a drinking problem and just saying, well, I'm gonna have one drink a night. Right. That's all I'm just going. And that would never be the advice from anyone, any professional anywhere. So it's going to be very easy to poke fun at this. It's going to be very, and I'll save my barbs for other stupid stuff Phil does, but I'll probably hang back on the gambling addiction stuff.
What was your take on the Ryder Cup portion? Because that was like to me, that was all the other stuff. You're like, the numbers are big, but not totally unexpected. The Ryder Cup was like, whoa, that's different.
And realistically, I mean, he could afford to lose. I mean, it's not a good idea. I wouldn't recommend it, but I mean, the guys had a lot of cash flow in. What Kyle's talking about is the idea that Phil Mickelson wanted to put down $400,000 on on Team USA winning the Ryder Cup in what was that, 2012. So I think two things. I don't feel this way, but I think not most people, there is a segment of the population that will say, well, he wanted to bet on himself. What does it matter? He wanted to bet on the team to win. What does it matter? People said that about Pete Rose. People say that about some of these new, we're seeing NFL players who are making bets. Oh, well, they bet on themselves. What does it really matter? All I know is that there is like one rule of sport, when it comes to gambling, and it's to like not gamble on your sport, not gamble on things that you are involved in. And while it is a lot of money, it is such a stupidly small amount of money to Phil Mickelson. Like Phil Mickelson winning $400,000 when he is making $50 million a year is not worth any of the trouble. And it's not even going to be noticed in his bank account. It is literally just like the thrill of him trying to do something nobody else would be brave enough to do. Put $400,000 on yourself to win the Ryder Cup. That's the addiction part of this. So it's completely bonkers to a normal person.
Yeah. But I think, I think you're right. I think the problem becomes that it's like you've already said I'm willing to bet on games, like events that I play in, right? That's the big 0 to 1 jump. That's the binary yes or no. And the jump from I'm willing to bet against myself or my team or whatever, to me is a smaller jump than going from I'm willing to bet at all, right?
Yes. And it always starts with, well, I'm not feeling so great today, and I'm not going to play well anyway, so I might as well make a buck on it and bet against myself. And then it's, well, now I'm playing well, I'm feeling good again, but this is easy money because I control the outcome. It is the definition of a slippery slope.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure Phil will, I guess, talk at some point about all of this. I don't know that there's going to be a ton more. I think the Ryder Cup was the big bombshell. I don't know that there's going to be a ton more in the book. Maybe there is. I don't really know. But I just think it almost just enhances or blows up his kind of character even more, of like, it's just more of what we already thought about Phil, that he's kind of always at war with himself. And again, it's not relatable to bet $400,000 on yourself in the Ryder Cup if he did or didn't do that, to even have that inkling. Nobody that I know would ever like even have the opportunity to do that, right? But it is relatable to like be struggling with something. And I just retweeted this great story that this person that volunteered at the memorial as a kid talked about, like how kind Phil was to him and sent him a putter cover, like just all these really cool things that you do hear about Phil, that I think he just struggles with like good and evil, like within himself. And that is freaking relatable. And so I don't, it's fun and easy to dunk on Phil, to make jokes. There will be probably some jokes during the Ryder Cup, and hopefully they're tasteful, but I think the relatability of it, somewhat humorously, because it's not relatable at all, is actually my big takeaway.